Hey, everybody, it's time for Simon's show, and I can't wait. Let's rock and roll. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Simon. Woo! Hey.
Hey, and there is Buddy Holly.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine,
Coming
George.
to you live.
This is not Buddy. Buddy passed away a long time ago. The other day, actually. Yes.
Yeah. 63 years. It's hard to believe.
Wow. Oh. And this, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know already, this is George Trullinger, renowned Buddy Holly impersonator from Las Vegas, but now in Florida. Which is quite a bit away from Las Vegas.
It is, and it's different too. Boy, it was culture shock when we first moved here.
Yes, so no alligators in Las Vegas.
And well, Las Vegas, the biggest shock was, Las Vegas was a 24-hour town. Literally, you could do just about anything 24 hours a day. So because there's so many people that work so many different night shifts and graveyard shifts and swing shifts.
Oh, right. That will be very appropriate for our first viewer here. Vids of your mom from the middle of Canada, but he stays up all night as well and watches me.
All right. Canada's great too. I've been up there a bunch of times, and it's always a great time in Canada.
Yes, that's it. I wonder. Yes, I mean you tour around Florida now, but when you were in Las Vegas, you toured the world, but you tour America too. You've been up there and Canada.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the first tour that I did was a tour of British Columbia, and we rented cars. We rented these Ford Fairmonts. This was about 1981. Mm-hmm. So we rented these Ford Fairmonts from LAX and drove up to British Columbia and did a big tour, driving tour.
You drove from Los Angeles?
From LA.
to British Columbia.
We did. Yes. And we started in Cranbrook, and we went all the way up to Prince George, and then we finished the tour in Vancouver and hit a bunch of towns in between. So it was a lot of fun. It really was. Right. I'll tell you how long ago it was. We were on a tour, and we were following a group called Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And so everywhere, we were like a day or so behind Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and we were staying in the same rooms, and sometimes you get to the room and it would be destroyed, or, they would look at us like, oh, here comes more trouble. So Frankie Goes to Hollywood, apparently, we were just young guys on the road.
Very innocent, naive guys from Los Angeles. Yes.
They would look at us, great, another show rolling through here.
Oh, yes, you could have covered some of their songs, yes. And all the penguins and polar bears in Canada remember you well.
Do you remember Frankie Goes to Hollywood? They had one song.
That's it. Relax, don't do it.
Relax, don't do it.
That's all the singing you're getting from me. You're getting more singing from George. I don't want to destroy my reputation. So, George, let's go back into the mists of time. I do have some photos somewhere. If I click this button, not very. I'm relying on you for very early photos. But let's go here, for example. This is you as Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly. I believe that was taken in Branson, Missouri.
I took it from the internet.
Yeah. And all of your people. It was funny looking at your montage for the opening of your show. When I was over in Japan, they had in certain parks and this was 20 years ago maybe, where they would actually have Japanese young men dressed like Elvis or Fonzie with the leather jackets and playing 50s music. It was great. We saw that a number of times.
Yes. in Yogi Park. They're they're very sort of like they're still going. They're our age and they're still doing it.
And our guys that did Elvis with the pomp hair and everything, they would sometimes join in, and of course, it was very. We had a great time in Japan too, because we stood out so much.
Oh, this is well, what I better do is actually pull up the picture of your team who were there at that time. If I can go to here, and it's all very technical. If I click on that and I click on that, there we go.
There we go.
Right. Can I zoom in? Let's see if I can zoom in. Everybody can see George there. There we go.
Yeah.
There's George.
And as you can see, the guy that does Elvis, his name was Jonathan, and he was 6'6".
Good grief.
And very tall. So over there, we stood out, and then the Marilyn Monroe. She has platinum blonde hair. Well, over there, they were fascinated with that, and they people like when we would ride the trains, people would just come up and touch her hair, or want to get it, they want to get a picture. People were very polite, but they were also very, very curious. And
she does look quite a lot like Marilyn Monroe. Actually, it's very accurate. Yeah.
That is Susan Griffith, and you can see her. She's in the movie Pulp Fiction.
Really? What does she? As Marilyn Monroe.
As Marilyn Monroe, right? And the tie-in is there's a scene in that movie where John Travolta takes Marcellus Wallace, the boss, takes his wife, and his instructions are do whatever she wants to do. So she wants to go to this club called Jack Rabbit Slim's. And all the employees are celebrity impersonators. And my friend Jerry Hoban was the maitre d', and he was Ed Sullivan. And he was the guy that sort of taught me how to do Ed Sullivan, and was the reason that now I am working with the Fab Four.
Which I see there's a poster in the background there. I better just pop very quickly to the appropriate picture, which covers both bases. Have a look. There we go. In fact, I have to zoom out now because you can't really see it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, me with the boys.
So this is the Fab Four, which is a Beatles, the top Beatles impersonation group. Yes,
they are so good. I was a fan of the Fab Four before I even met them, and to get the phone call from Jerry saying, "Hey, I need you to sub for me at the Las Vegas Hilton," was a great thrill. And my initial reaction was, no, I couldn't do that. And of course, I pursued it, and I've been with them for 18 years doing Ed Sullivan.
Yeah. I was watching some video clips of them in Liverpool, even doing concerts, and they are very, very accurate in their sound and their mannerisms, everything. It's even sort of like their faces, the expressions you can see in this photograph. They do look remarkably like the Fab Four. I mean, the Beatles.
Well, the great thing about working with the Fab Four is, and you discover it very quickly, they love the Beatles. They love the music, and their attention to detail, I think, is what separates them. And they, even though they are a tribute band, I would say that they are one of the most copied groups in our industry. And it is an industry from Las Vegas to New York City to all points around the world. The tribute business has really, really grown into a cottage industry. And there are a lot of groups.
This was something I noticed on one of your other interviews, that there's the word impersonator and the word tribute artist. But I think you sort of cleared it up quite well. It's like tomato. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Really, truly is. But it depends. There's different degrees of seriousness or professionalism. If you are a professional tribute artist, you are watching the films. You're watching everything, reading everything you can get your hands on with the goal of being, when you are dressed in the costume, of being as close as you can to that act. And of course, every act puts a little bit of them. You put a little bit of yourself into the character. But I believe the Fab Four show, more than any other group that I've seen, and I've seen Beatlemania and other Beatles shows through the years. Beatlemania was the first. That happened when I was still in high school. And ironically, I know a lot of those guys and have worked with them on occasion. And but that was really the beginning of the Beatle business as we know it today. The same it can be said for Legends. When we opened the Legends show in Las Vegas in 1983, which is a long time ago, nearly 40 years ago. Yes. The only impersonators, aside from there were one or two Elvis impersonators, but the majority of the impersonators were men dressed as women doing drag shows. There's a show called Boylesque. And so when we started doing the musical tribute, it was really Legends. The concept of the show was basically rock and roll heaven. If the good Lord went to Elvis in heaven, said, Elvis, gather up some of your friends and let's do a concert in the clouds. That was the original concept for Legends. And then over the years, the first several years that we performed, it was only deceased artists, people who had passed away that you couldn't see anymore. And then the popularity of Dolly Parton, and at the time Frank Sinatra when he was still alive, or Willie Nelson, or Cher was another good one. Then the concept was sort of expanded to the stars of yesterday and today. But that was the original concept. But the Fab Four, to your original point, they do an excellent job. Great attention to detail. And I noticed this, by the second song, the audience believes they are the Beatles.
Beatles, yes.
They're with them
I would recommend anybody, if you just sort of type in Fab Four, the Fab Four on YouTube, and go and check them out. And if you've watched Beatles films or clips of the Beatles, and then you watch the Fab Four, you can judge for yourselves. And I think they're pretty damn accurate. Yeah,
they are often accused, which was very ironic. Their attention to detail and their musicianship is so spot on that many times, if you read the comments, people accuse them of lip syncing. Oh, they're not really playing. They might look good, but they're not really playing. I'm here to tell you, they are truly great musicians, and they know how to sing and play just like the Beatles.
We noticed there in the, perhaps I should just go back to it. So you've got the Fab Four there, and that's you in the middle as Ed Sullivan. Yeah. And what you were saying just before about you bring a little bit of yourself into your tribute, and I've watched I watched your Ed Sullivan, and you do your own jokes. You do, some of the jokes would not be what Ed Sullivan would do, I should imagine.
Oh no, Ed Sullivan was very unfunny. In fact, a lot of people, if you will look up, there's a fella, and I knew him briefly. He lived a long time. Unfortunately, he's passed. But he made a career out of doing Ed Sullivan. His name was Will Jordan. Look him up and see him on the Ed Sullivan Show back in the 50s when it was in black and white. He also was, he portrayed Ed Sullivan in the movie The Doors and in the Buddy Holly story. So he was perhaps the most famous Ed Sullivan impersonator. He also did other characters very, very well. But he did Ed Sullivan on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah. Oh, right. So
and
he was on
so
Sullivan
good. Yeah. There are pictures of he and Ed Sullivan together. And he was on the Ed Sullivan Show many times.
So when you were when you'd been given this job to do? You know, can you sub me for? So did you then have to suddenly go, oh right, and then have to go and look at lots of or were you guided by your colleague? Were you sort of like told this is what you do, this is, or did you have to do it all off your own bat?
There was definitely a framework and a script. And when I first started off, I tried to stay very much within that same framework. And I was basically doing the jokes that Jerry was doing. As time went on and I became more comfortable, I began to interject or work out different bits that were more my own. And then there was a time where Jerry and I were working never together, but at the same time. And certain bits that I would do, they asked Jerry to do. So I felt very flattered. And Jerry was a great guy. He was really a scholar of show business. He knew about old movies. He knew about trivia. He knew about everything. And he was wise enough to know, hey, man, it doesn't matter who comes up with the bit. If it works, you know, if it's working for George and they want me to do it, great. And I was the same way. I was the same way with Jerry's material. Very respectful.
Just UFO Bob has entered the building.
UFO Bob, I can't believe it.
It's very early in the morning for him. Hello, Bob.
It is, but he gets up. He gets up early. He's been up for 2 hours at least. I know.
He was making sure his video was uploaded.
What a great
properly.
time! I would like to say that without UFO Bob, you and I would not have met. It was at his suggestion, and we had a video chat, and all this came about. Had a wonderful couple days out there in California, and stayed at the mothership with UFO Bob, and he had a beautiful.
I should explain that the UFO Bob and you go back to the beginning, and that sort of your original days as a musician brought you into contact with UFO Bob, who was,
this is true.
Was your manager at one time, I believe.
He ran a company called Cyberlight Productions, and I was in high school, and the guys in my band were in high school, and he primarily managed or promoted 3 different kind of bands. One was a heavy metal or a hard rock band called Third Creation, and those guys were our heroes. And then the other band was sort of like a nightclub band, a top 40 band called The Medulla, and they had put out a 45, and we were friends with all of them. And then our band was Premonition, and we basically played sock hops in high schools and middle school dances and things like that. And it was very early, and we idolized all the older guys. And he was very, was the first. There were a lot of firsts, you know. He treated us like professionals, and man, it's hard to believe that was in 1977 or 78.
Wow,
that was a long time ago, but it
that
taught
was
me
a
lot of things.
12. I think.
Well, I was 17 in 77, but I had been in a rock and roll band. I'd had a band in one form or another since I was about 14.
So, right. That's what I want to really sort of get down to the nitty gritty. I remember on one of your interviews you were talking about how you started, that your father taught you guitar, and it was the Beatles really that has made you want to become a rock singer or a musician. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. You know. There are several stories in show business about the impact that watching the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show had on different people, like Graham Nash or the Byrds, or just anybody that saw it. And it was a moment in rock and roll history that will always notate the start of what everybody calls the British invasion. The Beatles opened the door for groups like Herman's Hermits, the Dave Clark Five, even Tom Jones. All of a sudden, after the huge success of the Beatles, people in America wanted to hear British artists. And the list goes on. The Rolling Stones, just incredible. And then the music. So when I was 4 years old, I watched the Beatles. I watched Ed Sullivan introduce the Beatles, and that moment changed my life. And I never dreamed that all these years later, 50 years later, that I would be. I always wanted to be a Beatle, which on occasion I got the opportunity to do. But I never dreamed that I would wind up portraying Ed Sullivan, a part
introducing the Beatles. Yes, you watched
introducing the Beatles. So that
very moment, and that became you.
That moment that inspired me the most out of everything. I actually relive that moment every time I do a Fab Four show. I actually recreate the moment where Ed Sullivan, you say the speech, yesterday and today, our theater has been jammed with newspapermen and hundreds of photographers from all around the nation. These veterans agree with me that the city never has witnessed the excitement stirred by these four youngsters from Liverpool, England, who call themselves the Beatles. You do that, and
everybody.
I think about it. Wow, one more time, we're going to do the moment that made me decide. And I knew at a very early age that I wanted to be an entertainer, and that everything else that I would learn how to do, like hang drywall or carpentry or plumbing or anything else, was secondary.
Yeah.
And just a way for me to be a musician, ultimately to be an entertainer.
Yeah, well, entertainer is the word, because, I mean, when you do your stage show and you sing, you performed as Buddy Holly and you Mick Jagger and the Blues Brothers, but in there is not just this, you're not just singing the songs, but there's a whole routine. There's like comedy, and you're interacting with the audience. So it's kind of all round, really. It's.
And a lot of it, Vern and I were talking about it. UFO Bob and I. A lot of what I learned working at Disneyland, I utilize today. And one of the lessons was, out at Disneyland, being a Jungle Cruise skipper, you would do about 25 trips a day. And you would do the narration on a microphone and tell some jokes and what have you. But what that taught me was every audience is different. And there's an art or a knack to making the same spiel that you've recited dozens and hundreds of times feel fresh and like it's the first time. And I certainly utilize that with my 26 plus years with Legends, doing Buddy Holly. I would do 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week for over 25 years. So do the math. That's thousands of shows. And the secret is realizing that the audience is different, that there's people out there. Maybe there's some people that have seen the show before, but most of the time it's a first time experience. And when you go out and deliver, and of course there's different things. That's what the Fab Four does as well. Each one of them before a show has a ritual or a method that they use to get into character. With Artie, who plays Paul McCartney, he listens to the Hard Day's Night album to listen to it, just to get in that mood. Other guys have different things. So I'm thinking of, when I do a Buddy Holly show, I'm thinking of Buddy Holly, a young man from Lubbock, Texas, wrote all those songs. I'm also thinking about my energy, thinking about, music-wise, how I'm going to do a solo, how I'm going to keep it fresh. And yes, Mick Jagger's a different, when I do Mick Jagger, that's a different thing.
Yes,
when
I've seen that. It's completely different. Yeah.
And people don't even realize that I'm the same guy.
Yes.
Sometimes. And the Blues Brothers, the prep for that is comedy. You have to think like you're going out and of course you have an act, but there's always improv. There's always, could be a heckler, could be somebody yelling something out from the audience. So each act that I do, I have a different sort of frame of mind.
Right
before I go out.
It reminds me as well, I mean, because I used to do guided tours as well, not in the same vein. It was very sort of moderate, giving guided tours in a historic house. And you'd get sort of like 4, 5, 6, 7 like tours you'd do each day. And it was, trying to keep fresh was the tricky thing.
Of course. And that's, not that it's much the same with a Las Vegas show. It's sort of a grind, and you have to do things. And what I tried to do to break up the monotony of a production show was to learn different things, learn different songs. And many nights, while I would open the show, and there would be well over an hour wait till the end of the show where we would all do the finale. So I would grab a guitar and I would go sit in a fire escape on a stairwell and practice songs, practice different chords or practice. Also, Las Vegas was great because there were a lot of bands. Now, it's not that way anymore, and the pandemic has knocked out a lot of live entertainment. But we would do the show and then go to a club, and before you knew it, I'd be on stage and somebody would hand me a guitar and you could play whatever you want. Cool. I'd do the Stones, or I'd play the Beatles, or I'd play, whatever.
It sounds like an amazing life. I remember you also talking about the fact that you had a double life, certainly at Disney. Disney, you were this like cheery chappy, and then you went on stage and you could be a total rock and roll, in the evening.
I did. I kept it a secret because back in those days, although it's not so much anymore, they had you had to have your hair cut a certain way, and they wanted the all-American boy, boys and girls. Hi, folks. Welcome aboard the Jungle Cruise. My name is George, and I'm going to be your skipper and guide. And then I would go out and,
You really got me. You really got me.
I tried to keep the two separate, and then they had the guys in my area put on a big party, end of summer party called the Banana Ball, and I went to one of those, and it was about 1,200 people, and Hawaiian themed, everybody wearing aloha wear, and I went to the guys and I said, "Hey, I've got a band, and next year." I'd like to play this. I'd like my band to play this. You need a band because they were just spinning records. They just had a DJ booth. And so the secret kind of got out then. And it was great. It was a lot of fun. And then you go back.
They accepted you. You once you'd done that. So you did the banana ball. You did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And it was great. So I tried to merge the two. And then when I left Disney, also, part of my story happened on the night that John Lennon died. I was working the employee Christmas party at Disneyland, and I was unloading a Jungle Cruise boat, and it was friends and family inside the park, so it was a very easy night. It was very fun. I think everybody brought a toy to get into the park for Toys for Tots. We had a gift drive. And a buddy of mine came back from a break and just had a funny look on his face. And he broke the news to me. He had been watching Monday Night Football in the break area, and Howard Cosell had announced it. And it was very sad, shocking news. And I went home that night, and I sat in the bathroom looking in the mirror. And I had a talk with myself, and I said, this was December 1980, so I would have been 20 years old. And I said, up until now, you've done music as a hobby. just something to do on the weekends, just something to fool around with your buddies with.
Mm-hmm.
From this day on, you are a professional entertainer. You no longer do it as a hobby. It's time to get serious. And my thinking at the time, of course, what everybody was thinking was that, because everybody was hoping that, with all the legal problems and personal problems, whatever, we were all hoping that the Beatles would get back together one day, one time, and all of that in a moment was gone. And the reason I think they would have gotten back together, because if you remember the anthology, that would have been the perfect time. It may not have happened until, 96, 95? But it would have happened. If all those guys would have stayed healthy, time would have healed the wounds, and they would have come back together to tell their story and to make a lot of money. Telling their own story in their own way. And certainly Pete Best benefited from the anthology.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Even though he wasn't, he had been a Beatle at one time and replaced with Ringo. Of course,
he was replaced fairly early by Ringo. Yes, I remember.
But the death of John Lennon helped push me. That was the push me toward a career in entertainment.
Entertainment. I mean, was there another path that you would, because you said you're 4 years old, you'd been so smitten by the Beatles, and then you'd been, was there any other, could you have been a carpenter or a plumber? Was it sort of constantly, would you, at high school, there was no other course for you?
Well, I think certainly that's the case with anyone. Anyone who tries, and I look back, a lot of times it's because you get married and you have children, and then all of a sudden you have these responsibilities that can't be fulfilled with just playing on the weekends. And the electric guitar goes in its case, and it goes in the back of the closet, and it never comes out.
And like my drums over here under all these covers. Yes.
So, and not that that's a bad thing. Family and show business is not for everyone. But I can tell you this too. I used to practice packing when I was a kid. My parents had these old pasteboard suitcases, and I would practice packing for a week on the road, folding everything and getting it just so.
Right.
So I knew there was something about it that I knew if I wasn't going to make it my career, I certainly was going to give it a wholehearted try, and it worked out for me.
And speaking of children and changes and careers, I'm just going to call up this clip of you with your son, who has actually now actually joined you on the stage.
He's been doing it since he was a little kid. I remember
I've seen photos when he was really small.
Yeah, when he was very small. So we asked him what he wanted for his 4th birthday. He says, I want to sing on stage with you, Dad. So we made it happen, dressed him up in his little Buddy Holly outfit, and he came out and sang a couple songs. But I think the clip that you have, he joins me on stage now, and I don't have to lower the mic stand anymore. He's as tall as me.
So let's add this to the stream. There we go. There's you and me, and then there's This is what was he called? Is he called Roy? Roy.
Yeah, that's our son Roy.
Right. And I'll just if I start displaying, hang on, and then you can hear. I think. Tell me if you can hear it. Hopefully, you can hear it.
Oh yeah.
We better do a song before these people cry themselves to sleep. All right. We're gonna do one. You can help us out. Clap your hands. We've been doing this one a long time, and we hope you like it. It's called "That'll Be the Day." Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. That'll be the day when you make me cry. Say you're gonna leave it. You know it's a lie. Come on. They know it. Now you gave Give me all your loving and your turtle doving, all your hugs, your kisses, and your money too. You sit and hold me, baby, tell me boldly maybe that someday, well, I'll be through with. That'll be the day when you say goodbye. That'll be the day when you make me cry. Say you're gonna leave it, you know it's a lie. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yeah, yeah, that'll be the day when you make me cry. Say you're gonna leave me. You know, everybody sing it. When I die, well, that'll be the day I will. That'll be the day I will. That'll be the day, hey, hey, when I die.
Cool, cool, cool. Oh, I like that.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, that's amazing.
You always hear it. Kids grow up so fast. You turn around a couple times and they're grown. But life goes by very quickly. And
are you teaching Roy to play guitar like your dad taught you? Is that happening?
He hasn't shown an interest. We have a set of drums that he's interested in, and we have keyboards. And that's been primarily his interest.
Oh, right. So he could be appearing as your backing artist.
Maybe. Who knows? Well, this has been very nice, Simon.
You're welcome. I mean, I'm enjoying it too. It's like, so you do Buddy Holly. Now that was Buddy Holly, and you did it for more than 20 years in Las Vegas. How did that happen? How did it be?
Well, I went to the girl I asked to the senior prom. That was going to be our first date. I didn't want the prom to be our first date, so I asked her to the movies. And we went to the theater, and we saw the Buddy Holly story with Gary Busey. And as I was sitting there watching it, I was going, wow, that's something else. So then not long after that, our band got hired to play a Halloween party. And the lady that hired us wanted us to all be in costume. So the drummer dressed as Frankenstein, and there were different costumes in the band. And because I'm nearsighted, and I had an old pair of horn-rimmed glasses, like Buddy Holly glasses, so I was either going to go as Groucho Marx or as Buddy Holly. Yeah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Say the secret word and split an extra $100 between you. Madam, I'm defending your honor, which is more than you ever did. But, so I had a pair of glasses very similar.
That's your next stage manifestation. Groucho Marx. Oh yes, they're the genuine like horn rip. Oh wow. That's Buddy Holly, yes. Unmistakably Buddy Holly.
Yep.
So
and
you did
that. I just want to remind everybody at home, a lot of guys sell CDs. Not me. But I have an 8-track tape available. And get that. So anyway, I wanted to do a and that's how I got started. And then I did a show out in the Valley for just like a one-nighter with a bunch of impersonators. And when Jon Stewart was casting his show for Legends, looking for other people, somebody gave him my name, said, oh, here's a guy who does Buddy Holly. And I got a phone call, and it was for a 3-week job, and that job lasted 26 years.
Wow. And that's, I mean, it wasn't exclusively you. You were in that team, in that photo I showed earlier. You were sort of brought into a group. Yeah, because I've seen pictures of you backstage, all sort of jamming together. That looks, it looked like a really fun. And I've seen you with the Elvis impersonator doing Al Jolson impressions, which is.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. Now there used to be a fella. He lives down in Miami. He's not in very good health, but there used to be a fella named Clive Baldwin. So he did Al Jolson as an act, and ironically, the fella in that video, the Elvis in that video, is a guy named Dean Z, and he knew all about Clive, and his mother was a big fan, and Clive had a very distinct voice. So we were actually doing a tribute to Clive Baldwin and singing that. But all the people watching this, you can Google my name or go to YouTube and put my name in, and a whole bunch of stuff, crazy stuff, comes up. All different characters, all different points of my career, which I'm happy. I'm happy is out there. I've had a lot of fun backstage. A lot of bits that we do, jokes. You have to find some way to occupy your time. And certainly, we came up with a lot of jokes and pranks and acts and bits.
I watched a New Year's thing with you and with you and the Elvis impersonator, and that was quite funny.
Yeah, we used to have to take pictures of the people before they came into the show, and every night, you get in a costume and talk to people. And New Year's Eve was fun. My act, as you see it today, with the jokes and the humor and everything, pretty much in Las Vegas, I sang 3 songs at the top of the show, and then waited backstage for the end of the show where we would all come out and we would sing, Rock and Roll Heaven. But the act that I do today came about working on cruise ships, where instead of 6 or 7 performers, you only had 3. So I was expected to do 20 minutes and with a band, and cruise ship is different. It's a different audience, and it's more, everybody's willing to participate. Las Vegas audience, a lot of times, especially back in those days, they were drunk. They were pretty hammered.
Well, some of my audience could be in that state. I don't know. No.
Absolutely. UFO Bob is probably drunk right now.
At breakfast, even.
Little breakfast vodka. No, but so I developed an act that was more universal. Had a lot of audience participation, a lot of clap your hands, okay, answer me back kind of thing. I would do different impressions, like my Johnny Cash impression or Bob Dylan.
Oh, stop! Right, I want Ring of Fire right now. Is that possible?
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, burns, burns. That ring of fire. That ring of fire.
Fire.
Yeah. Hello.
Cool. Oh, yes. Oh, all these.
Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan sings the hits of the Beatles. Here we go. It's been a hot day's night, and I've been working like a dove. All right. Oh, Bob.
Blowing in the wind.
How many roads must a man walk down? Thank you very much, Bob. Bob did 42 albums just like that.
Yeah. Cool stuff. And you're still doing it. You're still doing it.
I'm going out. I'm going out for a 70s cruise. The middle of this month, the 18th, out of Miami, and we'll be doing the Blues Brothers, of course, big act from Saturday Night Live in the 70s. And then they'll give us a band.
You have to play Rawhide, otherwise you'll get get murdered.
That's right. Rolling, 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 though the streams are swollen, keep them doggies rolling, rawhide. We have a lot of fun doing the Blues Brothers. That's a lot of fun. And then they're going to give us a band, and
you get your
out
own
on the
backing
pool
band.
deck.
Yeah.
So it'll be about 85 degrees, and we will play some of the hits of the 70s, you know, which is my era. I graduated high school in 78, so a lot of great music from the 70s. Leonard Skinner and different groups. I think of groups, you know, different groups, or with your mama don't dance and your daddy don't rock and roll. And Leonard Skinner, you know. All that stuff. So we'll be having fun. The Doobie Brothers and whatever. We do a lot of requests. People that just yell something out, and then it's like mental gymnastics to see if you can do it.
If you can remember, the
you know. That's the way it was in Vegas. I played in a lounge group in Vegas for a little while, and you played requests, especially when people put money in the jar. If people took a $10 chip, hey, can you guys play some Doobie Brothers? Yeah, that was a great thing. A specific song, you get a specific song once in a while, but people would make a request for different groups.
All right. So you have to be adaptable. You have to sort of like know your repertoire.
Yeah.
Wow.
So music has been a great journey for me, and it's been a great thing. It's been great as a career. There's an adaptability factor. You know, you do whatever it takes. Also, with the Fab Four, they have a lot of media, and they have a lot of costume changes, and they have a lot. But they have said if there is ever a technical problem, the power goes out, or all the guitars on stage go dead, they just send me out, and I would do something. You know,
here's Ed. You go and save the show, Ed.
Go, and I've done that a couple of times. I did it in. We were playing in Lake Tahoe one time, and the weather up there is a little dicey sometimes. And lightning hit the building and knocked out the transformer, and all the lights went out. And now you're on battery power. The emergency lights are on batteries. So they hooked up a microphone. And I think it happened in the middle of Liberace or something. But
hang on, what you've confused me there completely. There was a Liberace show, impersonation show.
Yes.
Oh, wait.
All right. We had a guy. In fact, the night Liberace died, they had a guy in the wings, and the night Liberace died in Las Vegas, they brought him out and introduced him to the crowd, and he was great. But in the middle of the Liberace act, which is really the middle or past halfway through the show, the whole object is don't give the money back. If they said, "Oh, sorry," right? Everybody would get their money back. Yeah. So they grabbed me, and because they know I'm a nut, everybody knew I was a nut and a ham, and just give George a guitar. I would do it at parties, just give George a guitar and keep the beer coming, and you'd entertain at your party. Yeah. So they came and got me, and I stood out there. They got a microphone working, and I took Elvis's guitar. Yeah. And just did some stick, Yeah. Just did some stuff. Wow. And then the power came back on, and then the show picked up where it left off.
Yeah. But everybody remembered you instead.
Well. Yeah. And they kept saying, this was the irony of it. They kept saying, I was like, well, why me? George, take this guitar and go out there. Well, why me? Oh, we'll make it worth your while. We'll make it worth your while. I got no extra money, but I got a couple of extra buffet coupons.
Oh, right.
They never remember when you save the show. This is a show business lesson. When you save the show, when they do not have to refund money because the show went down for a technical problem, you never, ever get reimbursed. You never get compensated. It's just like, oh, well, you're just supposed to do that.
Right. The show must go on. Yes.
Yeah. And it does.
UFO Bob is requesting Japan stories because you traveled Japan with the legends. And you said you were telling us before about the people were going up and feeling Marilyn Monroe's hair and everything.
Yes.
But you played on stage, presumably in Japan at that time, in the bubble era in the 80s.
Absolutely. We actually played. I played there in the 90s as well. We played at some military bases at Sugi, Yokosuka. Yeah. And we did a New Year's Eve show, and they went very, very well, and we would be invited back. So the one New Year's Eve show I remember, we played at Yokosuka, we rang in the New Year, and it went till 3 a.m. And then after the show, our interpreters took us into the city, and we didn't even get back to the hotel till 6 a.m. And it was a wild night, and it was great. A lot of sake, a lot of food. It was great. The following year was the year of Y2K. And we rang in the new year. And of course, Japan and Australia were the first ones in the world
to cross the line
to see. And it was like, Happy New Year. And everybody was like this. Got to go home and see if the toaster is still working.
Yes.
And by it didn't even go till 12:30. By 12:15, the lights were on. They were sweeping up, and we went back to the hotel, and nothing happened. They didn't take us into town. It was like this big nothing, this big panic over Y2K. But that's what I remember. I think the story Vern wants to hear is
push.
He wants me to tell that story.
Yeah, he's itching for that. It's breakfast time in California. You don't want that kind of story at this time in the morning.
We went to a club. We had a guy with us. Who did Nat King Cole, and of course he was African American. And we were trying to get into a club, the Java Jive Club in Roppongi.
Oh yeah.
And we couldn't get in. And there were two great big guys. They sumo wrestlers, but they were giant guys working the door, and they had necks. Their necks were this big around, wearing a suit and a tie. And we were with the guy that did Elvis, and he goes up and talks to him. We try to get in. No, we can't get in. And he goes up and he says, "We have a famous American jazz artist, Miles Davis. He's with us." And of course, pointing to the guy that does he's not Miles Davis. He's a Nat King Cole impersonator. Yeah. And these two big guys with the earpieces and everything, and they look at each other and they go, "Miles Davis, hi." And they open up the rope and we go in the club.
I'm going to try that.
I swear to God, it was amazing. That was funny.
You never got anywhere as Buddy Holly like that. You know, it's Buddy. No, wait a minute.
Oh no,
Buddy Holly, he's dead.
No. Let's see. I did a movie one time. I did a movie. Hold on a second. I'll plug the movie.
Plug the movie with the 8-track.
Yes. This was a movie called It's Only Make Believe. And we did it. We filmed it in Las Vegas. And it was a story about celebrity impersonators in a Las Vegas show. And there was some drama, and there was, so I played a Buddy Holly character called Ed Waverly.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a very good movie. It's fun, to see yourself. And we had a lot of fun making it, but it never went anywhere. It never really did too much. But
yeah,
the fella doing Elvis, this guy here,
mm-hmm.
his name is Randy Frisky, and he's Canadian.
That's an unfortunate combination of.
It's probably a stage name.
I was going to say.
But anyway,
I should get him on
Canadian.
the
show. He's a Canadian Elvis impersonator. So years later, I had totally forgotten about it. Years later, I was walking through an airport in Toronto, Canada.
Yeah.
And people were looking at me. And I'm thinking, boy, they must have been to Las Vegas. They recognized me, right?
Yeah.
And finally, somebody walks up to me and says, "Excuse me, aren't you Ed Waverly?" And I said, "No." And then it dawned on me, well, wait a minute. Why does that name sound familiar? And he tells me that very much like Mystery Science Theater 3000, that up in Canada, they show this movie. It's a cult movie up in Canada because it's not very good. And you can tune your radio. They play it every Friday night, or they did at the time. They play it every Friday night, and you can turn the sound down and tune into this radio station where the guys and I believe alcohol's involved, but the guys at the radio station, they're having drinks, and they provide all the dialogue and all the sound effects for this movie. And I play Ed Waverly in it.
We have a Canadian in the audience. Can you confirm this? Believe in yourself.
I don't know if it's everywhere.
But he lives in Toronto, so I mean,
Yeah. But it was and I thought, wow, that's pretty weird. And I talked to not long ago. I talked to the producer of this movie.
Yeah.
I talked to the producer director of this movie and told him that story, and he got a big kick out of it. I said, well, you didn't win an Academy Award, but somewhere in Canada, there's some drunk DJs really making fun of this movie.
You're a cult figure in Canada.
Yep.
Oh, weird. Yeah. George Trullinger and Randy Frisky. Famous in Canada.
That's right. It was funny. There's a scene in that movie where his girlfriend catches him in bed with Marilyn Monroe. And the famous line from the movie, "It's not what you think it is."
Oh, dear.
She was showing me her stamp collection. Pretty funny.
Oh, dear.
But we had a lot of fun making it.
Oh, dear. Any movies in the future? I mean, because I remember you saying you wanted a movie of Ed Sullivan. I mean, that would
not just because I do Ed Sullivan, but researching the part. Ed Sullivan was a very influential figure for early television and for a lot of groups. And we go out and play these oldies cruises, and I'm pretty good friends with Little Anthony and Gary Puckett and a lot of people who actually appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. And the story is consistent. We were nobodies until we went on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then overnight we became stars. We had a 1 million selling record, and we were getting job offers. Little Anthony said before the Ed Sullivan Show, he was on the Chitlin circuit, and he was getting dressed in broom closets and in kitchens and, really shady places. And he said, we went on, Little Anthony and the Imperials appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. And the next day they got calls to headline in Las Vegas.
Wow.
And they never looked back. So, and people needed to know Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, as well as Elvis, the Doors, the Rolling Stones, and a lot of the people, early comedy, a lot of George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Will Jordan, a lot of comedians who also had great success Robert Klein. I did a cruise with Robert Klein, and he always told great stories about appearing on the Ed Sullivan Show.
So I mean, would you be prepared to be Ed Sullivan in such a movie? I mean,
I think at a certain point, they were, knowing Hollywood, knowing the business, they would probably prefer a name star. But I could certainly consult on it, or I see it as an opportunity for people in our business. Let's just say they were going to do the Ed Sullivan story. I think it would create a lot of work for some celebrity tribute artists. And I think it would be an interesting story to tell. Ed Sullivan was an interesting guy. And he got his start. He wanted to be a journalist, and he couldn't break in. So he came to Florida, not far from where I live now, and became the golf secretary at the Ormond Beach Country Club in the 1920s. And that was where the rich and powerful would come for vacation, and they would play golf. He even, and when the rich and powerful, the industrialists, the Rockefellers, even gangsters, even Al Capone vacationed in Florida. And then he would tag along and get a story and send it up to New York. And finally, a New York paper gave him a column, said, come on back, we'll give you a column. And that column was called Toast of the Town, which a lot of people don't know. That was the original name of the Ed Sullivan Show. The TV show was called Toast of the Town with Ed Sullivan, starring Ed Sullivan. And everybody just called it the Ed Sullivan Show. So by the second year, they dropped Toast of the Town, and it became the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah. Yes, and it had variety acts and entertainers and
everything. Not only the best, but he had some of the worst acts. Guys that would juggle chairs
like
with their feet.
Gong show worst, kind of. Like. Yeah,
the plate spinners. He had a guy, a ventriloquist named Senior Wences, who did the puppet. Sadai. The guy that did this with his hands. Yeah. Literally the best and the worst. But Ed Sullivan, to his credit, was one of the first guys to realize that teenagers they were a market to be catered to. So whenever he met families or met people on the street, he would ask the teenagers, what records are you buying? What bands what groups are you listening to? And even if he didn't know them, he would write them on a piece of paper and give them to somebody and then have them on his show. So that's how he maintained a broad demographic for his audience, which was pretty smart.
Well, that's all of us in YouTube could learn something from that. I mean, certainly, yes. My show is fairly, you, George, are actually one of the outliers on my show in the sense that one of my friends from Tokyo was saying, "You've got a really interesting guest there." She just said, she told me.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, because quite a lot of my guests on my show have a Japan. This is why UFO Bob was saying, ask about Japan. But
okay,
it's not always about Japan. It doesn't always have to be about Japan. So
Japan was a very, very interesting place to go. First of all, it is clean. I was struck. We went to a train station, and there were thousands of bicycles. And I went with somebody who spoke Japanese pretty well. And there were thousands of bicycles. None of them were locked. Not a bicycle lock to be seen. So the culture is lots and lots and lots of people. You'd see 500 people in Tokyo, especially, crossing the street.
Yeah.
At 500 people at a time cross the street. But you never felt claustrophobic. You always felt like, boy, this is a modern, cutting-edge place, and it was always exciting. It was the first place I ever saw karaoke, which we have here, but the first place I saw it was in Japan. And we were in a taxi cab, and the taxi cab driver had a microphone on a gooseneck that came down, and he would play karaoke in the cab and sing backup vocals. That was the first time I saw it.
Oh, wow.
But plus the technology, it was the first time I saw a CD before we really had them widespread here in the States. So the technology was incredible. Riding on the bullet trains were great. The food, and then you encountered people who knew we were from the United States. They just wanted to speak with you, and they would invite you to join them for a meal, and they just wanted to practice their English or be around somebody that spoke English. We had a delightful time over in wherever we went in Japan, and it was awesome. It was really. I would go back in a minute. Anytime.
Yes, me too. Me too. I mean, it's yeah. Well, if there's anybody in the audience, do you have any questions for George?
Hey,
because I've really been ignoring the audience. I'm terribly sorry. It's not usual for me to ignore the audience, but
how many people have tuned in, Simon?
There was at one point. If I quote my friend from my Philippine friend from Tokyo, she says, "Oh, I have 11 million people in the house." I had 7 million, which, if you deduct the million,
well, that's all right. I think this will get replayed, maybe, and if it's interesting,
yes, you can share it on your Facebook and
sure,
and on whatnot. But I think now. Oh, yeah, I heard a guitar. I think the moment has come for the outro. What would be an appropriate outro, do you think, George?
I've had a great time, Simon. You're a wonderful host.
You're very welcome.
You know
I've had a great time.
I mean this. I truly mean this. I hope that one day, if I ever find myself in Belgium, or if you ever find yourself in Florida, that we get to meet for real in person. And I say this also to my friend Plastic EP, who's from Melbourne, Australia. And
that's right, yes.
He's just this wonderfully wacky guy that I love to watch. But thank you so much for your hospitality and your interest in my career, which I hope will last a little bit longer. Take me into retirement.
I hope so too.
I'll be a lot of fun sitting at the old folks' home going.
Go and watch UFO Bob's. Everybody in the audience, go and watch UFO Bob's latest video, which features George in his old role. Or reprising his old role as the Jungle Cruise guy from Disneyland. Go and
I am the Jungle Cruise guy, that is for sure. No, I had a lot of fun.
If you like lots of bad puns, go and watch that video.
That's right. Hi, folks. Welcome aboard. Looks like we're fully loaded and we're off. Sure wish I was both, but that's a different story.
Thanks, George. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Simon. You take it easy. Right. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
You too. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody, and see you all again next week on the NoChaNoMa Show. Bye-bye.